the first saw Will Turner was, I was invited out for dinner with one of my customers, a solicitor, and he bought a lot of pictures from me. And he said, oh, the wife and I would like you to come for a meal. And I said, okay, thank you. And then he collected me, because it was hard to find his place. It was a great big house. And I went in, and then we had a lovely meal. And then his wife said, show Dave around the collections. And then we finally went into another room, and there were 2 Will Turners on the wall. Well, my hair stood on end when I saw them. I said, blimey, they're nice. Who were they by Pete? He said, oh, it's a chap called William Turner, but you'll never find any. He said, it's taken me years to get these 2. He's been dead years. I said, oh, has he? And he said, yeah. And I said, oh, they're marvellous pictures. And I knew the name because I'd read about him in books, and I used to think, oh, I should have known somebody like him. He's such a good painter. Anyway, I thought no more about it, came home. The following week, went over to Jeff Key's to get some work, and we got some work, and then luckily, as I just remembered as we were leaving, I said, by the way, Jeff, have you ever heard of an artist called William Turner? Oh yeah, he said, he's a friend of mine. Is he really? I said, oh, he's still alive? Oh yes, he said, he's 80, but he's still alive. So would you like to meet him? I said, I certainly would. He said, well, I'll give you his address, and I'll phone him tonight and tell him that you're a bona fide dealer, that you're dealing my work. Because you've got to be careful as his age, who comes to the house living alone. So a few days later, I got a letter back from Will telling me to come over. So we went over there, and I remember him opening the door, and we stepped inside, and I've never taken heroin, but it was like a scene from an opium dream, because there were over 1,000 pictures in the house, unsigned, many framed, unsold, but many of them framed. Absolutely amazing, going back to the 1950s, mainly oil paintings. And I just said, these are stunning, well, oh, they're marvellous. And I remember him saying, we went in the kitchen and there were some jam jars in the kitchen. And I said, what are they for, Will? He said, oh, well, he said, if I'm really hard up, he said, sometimes go to school fetes and things, and then I let people pay 10 pence and try and get a ping pong ball in the jam jar, and if they get it in, they get a 20 pence prize. But he said, nearly always they miss, so he said, I make a bit of money that way. And I thought to myself, how sad that a man of his talent and ability is making a few pence on a game like that. So at that visit, it took ages to choose because there were so many I wanted, but we ended up with, I don't know, 15, 20 pictures, I can't remember exactly, but quite a few. Well, they sold within a few days, and we went back and we got more, and then we began then to sell in massive bulk. And then this is where good fortune plays a part in any artist's career, because in the beginning so many people were asking me, but who is this Will Turner? So I wrote a piece about Will and his life story and his CV, as much as I could get from him, and then I printed out about 200 or 300 copies, and everybody that bought one of his pictures, I gave them a copy of this paper. And then a man came in one day and he said, oh, I like that, how much is it? And I said, oh, it's $2.65. He said, I'll take it. And I gave him this piece of paper and he went away. Well, then it turned out that he was the brother-in-law of Paul Barker, the Telegraph journalist. And he sent this piece to Paul Barker. And Paul Barker rang me and he said, there's a story here. He said, a man who's painted Lowry's portrait from life and has had a long career but has been forgotten. He said, there's a good story to be made here. And he said, do you think Will would like me to write a piece about him in the Sunday Telegraph? And I said, well, I won't even ask him. The answer is yes, he will. He'd like it. Oh, good, he said. Well, then he came up and interviewed me for a day, and then he went to Will's the next day and interviewed him and took photographs, etc. Then the piece came out in the Sunday Telegraph magazine, the article, and they'd included in the article my name, my address, my phone number and my email address. So for the next couple of weeks the phone was ringing off the hook with people asking me did I have any Will Turners to sell? And I said, well, I have got a lot. I said, but I sell them to my own customers. I'm not about to start sending them around the country, so I'm awfully sorry, but I've got lots of customers who are waiting all the time for me to get some new Will Turners in. And a couple of them were Royal Academicians, a famous Scottish painter, and I said, what's your interest in art? He said, oh, I'm a painter. Who are you? I said. He said, yeah, my name is so-and-so, and I can't remember the name now, but he told me the name. And I said, oh, the same as the famous artist. He said, I am the famous artist. And I explained that I couldn't let him have anything, and that was the end of it. Well, I was glad when the couple of weeks were up and I stopped getting all these phone calls. And then we went over to Will's once, and we got a big collection of old pictures of his from the 60s, 70s, etc. I think there must have been about 60 odd pictures we got that visit. So I put them all on the walls all around the gallery, and then I sent out a letter to all the customers in my email address book, and I said that I'd had this big collection of early Will Turners, and that they'll be available for sale on Sunday at 10 a.m. Well, on the Sunday, when it arrived, I was in the shop, and through the shutters I could see people walking up and down at 8 o'clock, waiting to be first in. And well, when 10 o'clock came, I raised the shutters, and the people packed in. The shop was full. But being British, nobody wanted to be the first to make a move, so they all stood around looking at the pictures, admiring them. And eventually one man went, I'll have this one, and he lifted one off the wall, and within no time everybody was grabbing the pictures. And after an hour or two, everything had gone. They bought the whole collection, and that was an exciting day for Will. And he was thrilled because his big joy in life was drinking red wine, but he told us that it was so expensive he just bought the occasional bottle. Well, after a couple of years of selling here, he'd made so much money. He told me that he had his own wine merchant, and he used to have cases of wine delivered to the house, and that made him happy as Larry. And he was on television. He Look North went to his house and interviewed him, and there's a film on TV about that, where he was interviewed by Look North, and he lapped up the fame that came with it. He had a very nice girlfriend, and she was lovely, and she was with him when I was contacted by Stephen Whittle from the old Mark Gallery, and they said they'd like to put on a big one-man retrospective of Will. So I contacted lots of customers who had bought very good examples from me, and they all agreed to lend their pictures. There were about 100 odd pictures in the exhibition, and it was a great success. And Paul Barker and Stephen Whittle, they gave speeches to open the exhibition, and then but nothing was for sale, of course, because they were all from private collections, but it gave Will a great window for people to see how good his work really was. And then after that, I was constantly being contacted with people who wanted to buy his pictures because they'd seen them in the exhibition and they loved them, and his fame just spread more and more. Oh, a great sense of humour, very funny, and always in a good mood. Whenever we went there, he was always in a good mood. And then I used to read out, he used to give me the titles of the pictures, which I'd write on the back, and then he'd write the AV numbers. He had this system of AV numbers because people were always ringing him and saying, we've got one of your pictures, it's of the Stockport Viaduct. Well, he did hundreds of the Stockport Viaduct. So he'd say, what's the AV number on the back? And then they'd read it, and then he'd look in his book and he could tell which picture it was there. And that was how he kept a track of all his paintings over the years. And he put, of course, on the newer work, he put new AV numbers on them, which we we would write on the back of every picture. So most 99% of Will's pictures have got an AV number on, except for the very early ones where of course he hadn't thought of doing that at that point. Mainly with lots of his pictures have leaning buildings is because he was a mad keen cyclist, and he used to cycle through Stockport and Cheshire, the different places in Cheshire, and of course with him being low slung handlebars and him being very low in the frame of the bike, and looking up to left and right, everything seemed to be leaning. Well, that's how he painted them. And he was very influenced by, he loved the work of Chaim Soutine, so there's a Soutine feel about a lot of his work. In fact, I think I mentioned this in my speech at Bill Clark's. I remember a guy came in once, a big, about 6'2" he was, very fat, and he spoke like those professors speak in old black and white films. He says, "Hello, Sid," and he was a professor of psychiatry, I think, at Bradford University. And he came in to look round. He said, "Oh my God," he said, "you have a Soutine there, Soutine." There was a small Will Turner where there was this clear influence of Soutine. And he said, "When I was a boy, I loved the work of Soutine." "Oh," he said, "it's wonderful." He said, "How much is it?" I said, "It's £265. He said, "Is that 1,000? I said, "No, it's £265. "Oh," he said, "ridiculous." He said, "I'll take it." I said, "But it's by William Turner." "No, no," he said, "it's Soutine, it's Soutine." I said, "No, really, it's by William Turner." And he said, "Oh," he said, "it's Soutine," and he paid me. And then I said, "Shall I put it in a bag for you?" "No, no," he said, and he held it to his chest. He said, "At last, at this time of my life, I own a Soutine." And as he was leaving, I shouted, "It's Turner, not Soutine," for fear that he might come back and sue me for false representation. And people say, "Oh, our favourite Will Turners, this, that and the other." And those customers of mine from Wales, they've got over 100 oils and about 120 watercolours by Will Turner. And I remember once I was at Will's house, and he used to let me wander around the house because I was always finding pictures. He'd have a pile of magazines. I'd go through the pile of magazines and find an oil painting in the middle where he'd put it and forgotten. So I used to get them there. And then I was there once, and Brian was having a cup of tea with him in the kitchen, and he said, "Go on, Dave, have a look round, see if you can." It was a big house, about 5 bedrooms, I think. So I remember going up into his bedroom, and then I opened this cupboard, and there was a big parcel in the cupboard, that big. And it had this hairy string round it, crinkly old brown paper. And I shouted, "Will, there's a parcel in your cupboard, what's this?" Lad," he said, "I've no idea, have a look, open it." So I opened it, and there were about 150 watercolours, all dating from the 50s and the 60s, and none of them had ever been framed, so they were absolutely mint. And I said, "Crumbs, these are wonderful, Will. Can I oh yeah, take them," he said. "I forgot all about them, they've been there for years." So, and these customers from Wales, they bought nearly 100 of them. And then I sold all the rest very quickly. But they were cheap, of course, then. Framed and mounted with line and wash mounts and everything. They were £150 each.